Okay, welcome everybody. My name is John Searby. I'm the Executive Director of Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation. If I haven't had the chance to meet all of you, I hope to very soon. We are extremely excited to welcome you to our 2020 annual meeting. We had over 200 people registered to join us tonight, so I'm sure that over the course of the next few minutes, we'll have people coming in. We're going to do a couple of housekeeping things while we're waiting for folks to join us. If you are not on mute, we would ask that you please mute yourself so that we don't get any feedback, that the only thing that you can hear is the speaker here in the room. We want to thank the Carolina Raptor Center for their new beautiful Quest facility for being our host tonight. They have a great setup for us to have our staff here but still be social distance and to have good technology infrastructure to come to you. If you want to be able to see the speaker view and the presentation, if you'll go up to your area where your images are showing up and click on speaker view there up in the top right hand corner of your information panel, choose speaker view and you will only see the person who is speaking, which will be the person standing here at the podium. We will be monitoring the chat throughout the evening. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. You can either put them privately to Catawba Riverkeeper John Searby, or you can put them to everyone, and we'll try to answer those the best we can as we go through. We've got an exciting and full agenda tonight, so I am going to hand it over to our board chair, Tyler Richardson, who is going to get us started with the business portion of our meeting. Tyler?
Thank you, John. Good evening and welcome everyone to the 2020 Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation annual meeting. My name is Tyler Richardson and I'm the chair of the board of directors, and I'm joined here tonight by a number of our staff. We're going to go through some very exciting updates from the past year as well as what to expect in the coming year. I think it's no understatement to say that 2020 may not have gone as everyone expected when we met this time last year at the annual meeting at Riverfest. However, you, our incredible team of volunteers, and our staff here at CRF have still managed to make this an extremely valuable and rewarding year for the organization. We appreciate you joining us this evening and letting us share with you all of the developments that have taken place over the last year, as well as what we're looking forward to in 2021 and beyond. So you will see on your screen here, once I change it. So here's our agenda for the evening. So first we will do some kind of more less exciting housekeeping activity, voting on board member approvals and renewals. And then we will recognize our outgoing board members. After that, we'll bring on Claire Atkins-Davis, our technical manager, for Swim Guide volunteer recognition, followed by our volunteers of the year recognition by our associate director, Diana Daniels. Next, Brandon Jones, your riverkeeper, is going to join us for the State of the River report, followed by John Searby, the executive director who we just met, to do an organizational report. Then I will come back on for closing remarks and adjournment. So, like I said, first things first, we're going to do some housekeeping, and you'll see here that we're going to go over board vacancies and appointments. We will review and collect votes for new board members as well as existing board members whose term is up for renewal. Given the setup of our virtual meeting this evening, we're only going to be collecting objections or nays. Our foundation members, which is everyone on today, will be submitting your objections, if there are any, through the chat function on your meeting screen. And we can give a second for everybody to submit any kind of feedback on that before we move forward. So first off, we are going to start with two existing board members whose first term is ending, but have graciously offered to continue their service for a second term. At this time, if we have any objections to the additional term renewal for Susan Tompkins or Bob Webb, who you'll see at the top there, please cast your nay vote into the chat function on your meeting window. And we will give just a couple minutes. And again, this is only objections. Otherwise, we will assume that it is approval from all callers joined. All right, great. With no objections, the renewal for another term for Susan Tompkins and Bob Webb are hereby passed. So next, we will have 4 new board members who actually filled vacant seats temporarily per the foundation's bylaws. But they have expressed their interest in becoming full-time board members for a full term going forward after this evening. You'll see the first-time board member nominees listed below. We have Danielle Clark, Joy Green, Bill Adams, and Cooper Lambla. If we have any objections to any of these people serving their first full term, please cast your objections or nays into the chat function of your meeting window now. All right. So with no objections, the approval for first term full board members, we have Cooper, Becca, Bill, and Danielle are hereby passed. So thank you to everyone for inputting any feedback, and thank you and welcome to our newest board members, as well as our existing board members renewing for another term. All right, next we have 2 board members that are actually going to be leaving us. We'd like to recognize the service of 2 outgoing board members whose term is ending at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. We have Randy Kelly and Marcia LaFew have been serving with CRF for the past 3 years, and their contributions have been no less than extremely valuable, including as fundraisers, volunteers, and most importantly, as just spreading the word and the mission statement of the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation. We wish both Marcia and Randy were here with us this evening. We hope you're watching. So we wish you were here so we could present these commemorative honors to you in person. However, we will make sure they make their way to you soon. Again, we can't thank you enough for everything you've done for the organization. We hope that you will continue working with us in the future in support of CRF. And thank you for your hard work and support. That's Randy and Marcia. All right, now on to the fun stuff. I'd like to bring up CRF's technical manager, Claire Davis, to recognize this year's swim guide volunteers.
Hello, I'm Claire Atkins Davis. I'm the technical manager with the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation. I was the head coordinator for the swim guide program this year. We had an actually very exciting year. We were able to expand it to 6 different lakes, and we were able to collect samples over 53 sites. We expanded it to, in our northern basin, to Lake James and Lake Hickory, in our central basin to Lake Norman and Mountain Island Lake, and then our southern basin in Lake Wiley and Lake Watery. And with the contribution and dedication of all of our volunteers who dedicated over 450 hours to our swim guide program this year, we were able to collect over 675 samples. We sampled for E. coli, which is a main indicator for bacterium, indicating if it's safe to swim. We also tested for turbidity, pH, and specific conductivity, which helps to understand a long-term study to see if those parameters will correlate with high levels of bacteria. So with that, we were able to collect over 2,700 different, or record 2,700 different measurements, and we were able to reach 21,000 people on our swim guide app, as well as 36,000 people on our Facebook. So to introduce our boat captain volunteers on Lake James, I'd like to acknowledge Bruce Sawyer, Margaret, Jim, Joe and Amos. On Lake Norman, Mark, Jason, and Michael. On Lake Wiley, Stephen, David, Ed, and Kathy. Lake Hickory, Jill, Jake, and Bob. On Mountain Island Lake, Greg, Blake, and Harold. And on Lake Watery, Jim Welsh, Jim Lotruglio, and Bill Riley. So thank you very much. Really appreciate, and we look forward to 2021.
All right, my name is Diana Daniels, and I'm the Associate Director at Catawba Riverkeeper. And tonight it is my honor to present the Volunteers of the Year Award to C.D. Collins, Jerry Ramirez, and Chuck Myers. Collectively, we call these three men the boat guys because what they do is take boats that have been donated to the organization and they fix them up either for use by the organization or for sale, with the proceeds coming back to Catawba Riverkeeper. And this year, their efforts have raised more than $30,000 for the organization, which is huge. So we just want to extend a big thank you to the boat guys. And we'd also like to present them with these custom paddles made by the Southern Wood Paddle Company. And these paddles were actually made from salvaged wood from the Santee River. So once again, thank you to CD, Chuck, and Jerry for all of your work. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Jones, your Catawba Riverkeeper, for the State of the River report.
All right. Well, thank you to, again, those boat guys. This is a huge help to us because John and I are not mechanically inclined. So I'm Brandon Jones, your Catawba Riverkeeper. And this evening, I have the pleasure to present to you the State of the River report. This is something that has been in the works for many, many years. This is something that a lot of other organizations have kind of led the way on, and we are really excited to be able to do this. The State of the River report is essentially a comprehensive report of water quality and water quantity. And so there's lots of small reports that we do, and there's lots of other indications. But the goal with this report is really to simplify all those numbers and all those measurements that we take down into some kind of meaningful numbers that we can give to the general public. So we're not just talking about the dissolved oxygen over here, or just what the pH was in this one lake, or the E. coli at that one spot. We really give those big picture looks so we can better address the water quality issues in this basin. So, hold on here. All right, so the purpose of this report, again, is to provide the public with a consolidated assessment. The other thing we want to do is to try and create a database. So we collect data, the states collect data, Charlotte Water collects data, different volunteer organizations collect data. They all have the data in slightly different formats, and they put it in slightly different databases. And so when we want to answer a question, we'll go out and we'll pull data from 5 different places. But we don't regularly put that all in the exact same spot. And so the advantage of having this kind of report is that we are pulling all that data together, so that maybe we won't analyze it all right now, but when we do this next year, in 5 years, and 10 years from now, we'll be collecting the same kinds of data in the same ways, and we can do some of those longitudinal studies. The scope is really important. There's lots of studies that are based on small watersheds. There's lots of studies that are look at just one particular issue, one particular place, or maybe one particular time. And so when you're creating one of these reports, you have to answer a lot of questions. The first thing you have to talk about is the area. And so luckily for us, it's pretty standard. We have a set area. We have about a 5,400 square mile river basin. The next thing that you want to look at is the time. So are we going to go all the way back to 1900? Are we just going to look at the last 3 months? Or are we just going to look at the last sample? For this particular report, we chose to look at just the last year of data. The idea is that this will be a snapshot in time, and we'll be able to build on that moving forward. Some data sets are not available for the last year, and so in those cases, we use the last available year of data, as long as it was sooner than 2015. And then the goal of this is not to repeat work that's already been done. So many of you probably know that under the Clean Water Act, the states are responsible for what's called a 303D assessment. And so what the states do is they will have a number of ambient monitoring stations across all the waters of the state. They will test those for certain parameters which are required by the federal government. If those parameters exceed the standards, then that river is considered impaired. And so the state is already kind of doing one of those quantitative analyses. And so we're not trying to replicate that. We're trying to pull a lot of other data that's important to people. So things like the number of sewer overflows, or the again, E. coli counts, which North Carolina doesn't look at, or the land use changes, or the turbidity, or other issues that are not necessarily being looked at just in that 303D list. And so the goal then is to take all these different areas that we're looking at and then to consolidate that into one single number, to one single score. Some different organizations will do that in like kind of a 1 to 100 scale. You guys might be familiar with Charlotte Stormwater. They have a program called SUSI, or the Stream Use Support Index, which is essentially a smaller version of that same EPA 303D list. So we want to do something a little bit different and a little bit more qualitative so that we can combine a lot of different types of data. There we go. So as I said, the first challenge is kind of looking at this geographically. Obviously, we don't want to give one score to the basin and just say, oh, it was an A or a B. We also don't want to go out and give a score to every single puddle. So we do have to make some kind of geographic distinctions. Luckily for us, the U.S. Geological Service does a lot of this already. They have what's called HUCs, or hydraulic unit codes. So there's already a few of these out there. And so using the HUCs that were already available, in this case it's called the HUC-10 model for the science nerds in the audience there, we pieced together 4 basins. These are, again, kind of already based on pre-existing done, but we also wanted to look at certain flow models. And so, for instance, we have the upper basin, and so this is, you can see on your screens, it's there in green. This is all the water that flows into Lake Norman. And so this is everything from Catawba Falls and Linville Gorge and Wilson's Creek and those areas, and that eventually will flow through our top 3 reservoirs, James, Rotis, and Hickory, and 4 through Lookout Shoals Reservoir. So all the thing that flows in that area. So that's going to be our top unit. Next one, we have the South Fork unit. That one is really different from a lot of the other areas, and that is largely completely free flowing. There's no real dams on that section. I mean, there are some dams, but they're called run-of-the-river dams. They don't actually impede the flow. So that one's really, really separate, has a lot of different characteristics. So we wanted to give that one its own score. The next one is the Middle Basin, and that's made up by our 3 largest reservoirs, or 3 of the larger reservoirs, the largest Lake Norman, our major drinking water reservoir, Mountain Island Lake, and then Lake Wiley. And so you can see that there in the reddish pink. And then finally, the bottom half there, we lumped all that together to be one southern basin. And it looks like it's pretty different. And again, you have the upstream, which is very, very urban in Charlotte. At the bottom of it, you've got Congaree National Park. But it's kind of similar to those South Fork. What happens there at the top in Charlotte really impacts those bottom lakes. And so it's kind of important when you're assessing it to consider what's coming out of Charlotte, what's coming out of Rock Hill, if you want to be able to understand the water quality in Fishing Creek Lake and in Lake Wateree. So these are obviously not perfect. These are a lot of subjective decisions were made in this report, but I do feel that they're defensible, and this is the first time we're doing this. So if we find out later that we really should have broken that down some other ones, we really should have combined it somewhere else, we're willing to adapt, but we need to start somewhere. The next thing we have to do is actually look at what we're monitoring. So I don't want to give a separate score for every single parameter that was created. We want to kind of lump them together to tell some of these bigger stories. So for instance, one of the categories to look at was monitoring. And so for monitoring, we're combining a few of the different characteristics. So we're looking at the number of sample sites that are actually out there, the quality of data that's being reported, where that data is being reported to, is it actually useful? One of the things that is frustrating about the monitoring that North Carolina does is they don't regularly update their website. So the last time they updated the website was in December of 2018. And so all the data on there is almost 2 years old now. So it's not particularly useful. So even though they're collecting data, it's not going to really tell you the full story. And then again, what they do with that data, looking at the TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads that happen if things are impaired, and that's a lot of jargon. So read the report if you want more jargon. Then next up are going to be point sources. So this is anything that is a permitted discharge in the river. The kind of major ones here are going to be all of our wastewater treatment plants and then all of our industrial discharges. And so we wanted to look at those to see where they are in the basin. You know, if they're all concentrated in one area, that's going to tell us a little bit more what they're actually discharging, if they're in compliance with their reports, if the reporting is being updated. Again, we have the problem where in North Carolina, some of those reports go to one database and then they're not ever uploaded to the national database, so they're impossible to search. And so looking at, kind of giving that a grade and how well we're doing with this system. The next up is our main source of pollution here in the Catawba Basin, and that is our non-point source pollution. And so that's everything that runs into the water. So these are going to be our cities have stormwater permits, stormwater programs. This is going to be land use, so the amount of impervious surface in different watersheds, the amount of plastics. We're quantifying plastics that we catch now, so we can use that. And then the number of actual stormwater permits that are issued in a certain area. So all those things kind of come together to give us an idea of what non-point source pollution is included. Next up is water quantity. You guys might notice I guess it's not as bad anymore, but we had a hurricane come through. We had a hurricane come through 2 years ago. So water quantity is not just droughts, it's also going to be flooding. And so with water quantity, again, we're looking at the drinking water intakes, the potential for flooding through impervious surface, and then the amount of gauges that are out there so that people can actually track that flooding. And then any buyouts that have happened. And then finally, recreation. And so this is the part that I really get excited about. And I think a lot of other people do. So how do you actually recreate, or how do you access the water? So we're looking at things like the number of boat launches, the amount of bacteria that's being done, like ours, to get that swim guidance. We're looking at harmful algal blooms, the number of invasive species that can really change the type of fishing that's available, and then fish consumption advisories. So all those different parameters kind of get lumped together into recreation. With all those different measurements in each of those big buckets, we have to score them. So what we chose to do is what's called a Likert score. It's a simple 1 to 5. If you've ever rated anything on Amazon, you've done this. We wanted to give each of these parameters in each of these basins a simple score, and that way we could kind of track it over time. And so excellent is defined here as no major issues. It's meeting all the needs for all the users. So, if there's excellent monitoring and everybody can access the data and it's got full coverage, that is going to score a 5. Next up is going to be good. And so good would be something that is meeting most of the needs for most of the users. And so if you've got, water withdrawals or water quantity for almost everybody, it's good all the time, and there's just this one street that floods in the entire basin, that might be like good. Or if there's just one smaller area, for instance, that floods, or one area that can be kind of drought prone, something like that might be considered good. The next score of 3 would be a fair. And so that's something where there's usually going to be at least one major challenge, something that's a bit more persistent that can't be easily addressed. And it's not meeting the needs of many of the users, or most of the users every now and then. Finally, poor is going to be, there's several challenges. It's not meeting the needs of most of the users most of the time. And then very poor, a score of 1 would be something that's not meeting the needs of any of the users. And so, for instance, if none of the data is available, or there's no recreational access, or you can't get any water out of it because it's all not potable, something like that. So now I'm going to go run through each of the 4 basins. I'm not going to go through everything that went into this. Again, there'll be a report issued. But I just want to talk through some of the highlights and give the score. And so the Northern Basin scored at 3.8, which, as you'll see soon, is pretty darn good. That was our best, which is it's not a huge surprise. The real issue in the Upper Basin is the monitoring. There's a really good network of monitoring on Lake James based on what we do, what the Lake James Environmental Association does, and a little bit from the state. However, once you get downstream of Lake James, there's only 3 monitoring sites for the rest of the basin. And so it's really not good coverage. And those 3 sites are also covered by the state, which means the data is not available for 2 years. So we really need some more monitoring up there. So that was the one thing that drug it down. As far as the other ones, they were usually good to fair. with the point sources and the non-point sources. Yeah. The upper basin does have some of the best recreation. I mean, I think we all know that you go up there for the Limbo Gorge, for Pisgah National Forest. It's got our only wild and scenic rivers in the basin. It's got our only federally designated wilderness. There's excellent recreational access. You can see on the map there, all the little canoes, they're all over that area. So definitely does really, really well on recreation. And then the ratio of the volume of water in the basin to the number of people is really good. So you don't have really any water quantity issues at this point. They're actually going to be putting in a new withdrawal here in a few years. So again, big takeaways for the northern basin.
Really?
It's really good up there. Not surprising because it's the tidewater's at the top of the stream. So all the problems that are up there are their own problems. Can't blame anybody else. There's really a huge lack of monitoring though. And so maybe there are some issues that we're not quite quantifying yet. One of those is CAFOs. So in Alexander and Caldwell counties, just north of Hickory, there's a large and slightly undefined number of concentrated animal feeding operations. These giant facilities produce thousands of tons of manure, and is currently not being tracked by the state. It's not being investigated, it's not being permitted. And when we go out there and take samples, we get really high levels of bacteria. So we know that this is a problem that they're gonna have to address. In addition, because of the steep terrain, after a rainstorm, we do see high levels of runoff. And so once you clear that forest and you get that rain, because of the topography, you're just naturally gonna have a lot more non-point source pollution. And the South Fork Basin. This is the exact opposite. The South Fork Basin did really poorly. Average score of 2.8 here. Similar to the Upper Basin, there's not a lot of monitoring. You can see the little green triangles on there. There's a couple kind of stretched along the main stem, but there's none in the smaller watersheds adjacent to it. And again, most of that monitoring, actually all of that monitoring is done by the state. And so even though you have those stations, they're not really going to be useful for analyzing the current water quality. The one kind of good thing about this area though is there's not a lot of point sources. There used to be a whole string of industry, and especially in the southern tip in the Belmont area, and most of that is shut down. So we don't see a lot of point source pollution. Instead, we see a lot of non-point source pollution. If you've ever driven up 321, every time you cross a bridge, it is just brown. There's a lot of runoff that occurs there. Some of it is urban, some of it is rural. It's difficult to get to because there's no access points, kind of going down there in the recreation. So that's a major story there for the South Fork Basin. The good news is they do have plenty of water for the drinking water supplies. And flooding is not too common currently. Again, worst overall score, and there's a lot of bacteria in the water. We, for our swim guide samples, regularly get high levels of bacteria in the South Fork. So even if there is a lot of access on some lower points, you don't really want to be in the water. Next up, we have the Central Basin. So again, this is all the water that flows into Lake Norman, Mountain Island Lake, and Lake Wiley. We've got kind of an interesting layout here. Hold on, guys, I apologize. Just 1 second. Need to do a quick update. Good. Okay. Sorry. Love technology. This is really fun. Here in the Central Basin, it's kind of an interesting story where you've got some of the biggest water quality problems, but you also have kind of the most money and resources being thrown at those solutions. And so the monitoring is quite good. You've got a lot of work being done by Charlotte Stormwater Services, Duke Energy, R Sampling, and some kind of hit or miss from a few other groups. And so there's a lot of data being collected. It's not always the easiest to get to. You generally have to send out a request form, But there's a lot of work being done out there. So you got these point sources. Again, we've got a lot of wastewater treatment plants. We've got coal-fired power plants. We've got nuclear power plants. So those are discharging hot water. Non-point source pollution, again, we've got lots of major cities. We've got lots of runoff. We've got more of that coming, with areas like the River District, where you got 1,000 acres that are going to be developed right there on Lake Wylie. But that being said, the monitoring and the regulations are also some of the strongest in the entire basin. And so it ends up kind of balancing out where it's okay. And then the same thing with recreation. You've got kind of these access points where if you have a boat, they're really useful. But if you don't have a boat, it's really hard to get on the water. If you just want to go swim, I mean, there's only 2 or 3 spots in the whole area that you can go swim in. And those are often really, really crowded. So again, all these things kind of go in there. It's a interesting story. Yeah, and for this area, population growth is really going to be the major challenge. Is all those types of pollution that are currently being managed are going to get worse as the population grows. And so the resources applied to balance those are going to have to continue to expand with that growth. And then finally, we have the Southern Basin, our largest basin. This one has amazing monitoring. I mean, I was even as surprised as I kept digging it. There's so many groups that require that, they get so much good data from this area. So in the Southern Basin, you've got Stormwater Services. There's a whole special potassium nutrient study that DHEC's running. There's the Lake Watery Water Watcher trainings. There's South Carolina Adopt a Stream. There's our swim guide programs. There's USC Lancaster's. We did not get all the sites on there. The map just gets crazy busy. But there's tons of sampling, and every single one of those groups has their information quickly and readily available. And so you can access that, which is amazing.
Millie,
Unfortunately, we still have a good number of point sources, the main ones being large industrial or large wastewater treatment plants. So all of Charlotte drains out here. They pull in the water upstream from Mountain Island Lake and Lake Norman. It runs through the pipes and through our bodies, and then it gets pushed out through Sugar Creek, and so then it runs back into the river. So we do have a lot of point sources from that, but it's pretty well regulated. For non-point sources, that's where we get a lot of problems. Now, this is a fairly diverse watershed. Again, you've got heavy and areas up to the top where we've got a lot of impervious surface, and down there at the bottom, you've got a really, really rural area. Hold on, I need to pause this for a second. I'm trying to use, I think I got it. Okay, sorry about that. Non-point sources are the real problem for this area, and they're varied. Like I said, you've got runoff from Charlotte, which looks very different than runoff from Lancaster, but there's still a large problem. Every time it rains, we see huge spikes go up. You see a lot of impairment there in the stream. You see those numbers really go up, and so all the orange lines are the ones that have failed at least 10% of the time, and that includes Lake Watery down there. All that runoff then can contribute to the algal blooms that we see in Lake Watery, and it really impacts the water quality. Water quantity, though, is pretty decent in this area. Again, this is just the last year, and so looking at the last year, we didn't have a lot of drought conditions, but because of groups like the Catawba Water Management Group, they're much more prepared to deal with that than they have been in the past. And the previous flooding that usually occurs on Lake Watery is finally being addressed. So they're in part of a 3-year construction on dam there, or a rebuild of the top of the dam, which will allow that to pass floodwaters. And so starting hopefully in 2 years, Lake Watery should not be going over 100 feet really ever again. Yeah, and this is an image of where the where the Sugar Creek comes into the Catawba River. So again, I think it's really important to stress that just because you're down there in bottom South Carolina, you do have to look upstream. That's where a lot of the stuff's coming from. And so we're trying to address it from a more full perspective and a full managing that water all the way from the top to where it gets down and trying to find the sources. All right, so conclusions. All the data that I poured through, there's probably a couple hundred pages that you can go through. Tons of maps that we've created. Some of those will also be digital maps that you can go through and zoom around, so you don't have to look at the tiny ones we issued, and some of those will be hyperlinked to other data. The actual written report, all that is going to be on the website tomorrow. I will say that this is kind of our initial findings. I have not dug through every single source on everything. And so if you find supporting or challenging evidence, and let me know, and we will update this as needed. Kind of the big overarching themes are they going to be that non-point source in every watershed is going to be an issue. As we continue to have more people live by the water, we're going to continue to build more impervious surface. We're going to continue to remove forests, and we're going to see this be a problem. So we know that that's going to have to be something that we as an organization really shift towards. Some good news is, though, that most of the time, every single area met those state and federal criteria. There's really no spots that I could find on the river where it's constantly too dangerous to swim, or constantly has spills, or most of the stuff really is addressed. You have some spots that don't get heavy rain maybe, but in general we have really good water quality, and we have a lot of it, especially right now. But we're in a pretty lucky situation here. And then state and local legislation matters. I mean, I know there's a lot going on at the federal level right now, but what the states have done has really made a huge difference. In the last 10 years, North Carolina has cut the Division of Environmental Quality's budget by about 30%, and it shows. South Carolina at the same time has increased their environmental budget by 14%. And again, it shows. We see that North Carolina really struggles. They can't hire people, they can't keep people in the same spots for long enough. They're constantly shuffling around. They can't get to all the sites to investigate them in time. They really need more funding, and they could definitely learn from what South Carolina has done. All right, well, that was a lot. So I will briefly pause for questions. Again, I will be available over the next couple weeks and months to answer more specific questions. But we'll go ahead, and I think John's probably got a few questions from the chat, and I'll take a couple minutes.
One question is, if groups are interested, such as the Lake Wylie Marine Commission, in getting involved, helping us do monitoring on their specific area of the basin, what would that look like?
Yeah, so for areas that, okay, so John asked, or somebody asked in the chat, if groups like the Lake Wylie Marine Commission or other smaller groups want to get involved in monitoring, what does that look like? It really takes a long-term commitment. That's the biggest thing. We don't want to just get a Boy Scout troop out there that's going to go and sample by their spot for a couple weeks or months. If we're going to start adding sites, we want to be able to maintain them in the long run. And so that means having some kind of long-term source of funding and some kind of long-term accountability for who's going to go out there and take the samples. Processing the samples is pretty easy. We've got a lot of great equipment to do that. Entering the data samples in a database, it's not that hard. The difficult part is getting the funding to get people out there every single month, rain or shine, to do that. So I am happy to sit down with anybody that feels committed to doing that. We are happy to take the data, we can enter it into the national database, but it has to be that long-term commitment.
Another question is COVID or the economy having any impact on testing and capacity?
Yeah, so the question was, is COVID or the economy having any impact on testing or capacity? Initially, there was some sampling that certain organizations stopped. So certain sampling runs were missed early in COVID. There was also a thing put out by the EPA, which said that if I have an industrial facility and I'm supposed to take a test this week, but the lab is closed, I don't have to submit those test samples. So we're kind of wait, those come out every couple of years. So we'll see if any of those tests were missed. But if they were, we still wouldn't really know if they were dumping a lot of pollution extra because of that. So maybe, but nothing like what we've seen for air quality. There hasn't been a drastic improvement in water quality or a drastic decline. Most of our water quality issues, again, are based on the rain, and that has not really changed.
If individuals want to assist in gathering data and things like that through Tompkins, what's their best course of action?
In the short term, or right now, the best program we have set up is Swim Guide. We always need people during the summer. As Claire mentioned, we had a ton of really dedicated individuals that came out and did those weekly runs. We are working towards setting up an ambient monitoring program where we take samples year round from lots of sites. But again, we don't want to duplicate what the state's doing. So if there's a volunteer that lives in an area that we're interested in, like Alexander or Caldwell County, that wants to go sample with me, I'm happy to have people ride along or to do some kind of trade-off or to train them to take samples for a program. But we want to be really selective about why we're sampling and what we're sampling for. And so we need to develop some kind of need for that before we just start sending people out. But Swim Guide, definitely next summer, we're going to need all hands on deck. All right. Next up, I will hand it over to our Executive Director, John Searby.
Thank you, Brandon. Brandon and Claire both deserve a huge shout out for the lift that went into writing the State of the River report. As Brandon mentioned, this is the first time our organization has tackled this, and we hope that over the years this gets better and better, and we get deeper and deeper data over time. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, we put an email address in the chat. You're welcome to send questions through that email. Brandon also mentioned we will be publishing the formal report that you can read through that has a lot more data, science behind the report itself. And we will build a frequently asked questions portion of our website to be able to answer questions that come through. We hope this becomes a dynamic document that lives on throughout the year. I want to take you through a couple of organizational updates. As I mentioned at the outset, I've been on the job since April of 2019, so I'm on my second annual meeting, but only about 18 months in. I have been extremely proud of the growth of our organization during the 18 months. And we joke internally that when the locusts come, then we will have been through every single tragedy that we can experience. 3 months after I started, our offices flooded. We were displaced for 6 months. We've gone through a global pandemic. We have figured out how to work remotely. And through it all, our staff has been amazing. So those of you who are volunteers with us and work alongside us on a regular basis know the quality of people we have. So I want to publicly thank them. You're going to meet a few of them over the next few minutes as we talk about some of the specifics. And we're going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we've done. We hope to reinforce what you already know, why what we do matters. And then we're going to tell you how we're doing it today and cast some vision for the future of 21 and beyond. When the shutdown came in March, one of the things that we were working on during that time was really trying to define who we are as an organization. And that gave us the opportunity, honestly, to pause, take a little bit of break from the day-to-day rush of events and things like that, and put some meat behind who we want to be. And the statement that you see on the screen now, we call this our fuel statement. This is what undergirds and supports the mission of the Catawba River Keeper Foundation on a daily basis. And this is the litmus test that our staff uses every day when we're making decisions about how we're going to spend money, how we're going to spend our time, and if a program is ready to go out to the public. So as members of our organization, we ask you to hold us accountable to this. Hold us accountable to being an organization of action. We don't want to sit in our offices and talk about doing good work. We want to be on the water doing good work for the river basin. We want to be an organization of quality. Everything we do, from the smallest meeting to the biggest event, we want to do with excellence. We want to be an organization of leaders. All 9 members of our staff today, we want them to be known in this community as leaders in their specific fields. We want them to be the ones being asked to speak, to lead committees, and to guide the future of our region from an environmental sustainability standpoint. We want to be an organization of innovation where we are not afraid to try new things. And I think during the last year in particular, we have shown that. And you're going to hear about some of those innovative things that we've done over the past year, like Camp in a Box, On the Water with Wayne. We want to be an organization of engagement. We want our members to be alongside of us, working next to us in our communities to improve the quality of our water. We want people who talk about Catawba Riverkeeper to know that there's a place that you can come volunteer with us, come paddle with us, come sample with us, and get good work done for this river basin. So what have we accomplished in the last year? Probably the most important thing we've accomplished in the last year, and perhaps the most important thing we've accomplished in the 23 years of our organization's history, is on December 31st of 2019, we came to a settlement with Duke Energy to remove more than 100 million tons of coal ash from the banks of North Carolina's waterways. This 10-year ongoing work was carried out through multiple executive directors, multiple river keepers, multiple board chairs. But through it all, our organization focused on the importance of protecting the key reservoirs for our basin. And we are very proud of the conclusion of this settlement. We're going to continue to monitor this for years to come, but it is exciting to know that in our generation, the coal ash that is on the banks of the Catawba River will no longer be dangerous to our drinking water sources. Second big thing that we've done in the last year is to grow our organizational capacity. We currently have 5 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees, and 2 AmeriCorps members. That is twice the staff that we had 18 months ago. Additionally, despite COVID and the shutdown and all the craziness of this summer, we hosted 7 interns this year, and I believe we gave them a fantastic experience. We got creative about our working environments and how we connected with them, but they did great work for our organization this summer, and we really appreciate that. Through that, our membership continues to grow. We have over 5,600 members supporting us in our 26 counties across 2 states with their time and resources, and every month we see new members added. Those of you who have been longtime members, we thank you for that. We ask you to continue to talk to your friends and neighbors about joining. The folks that are regular annual members that give $50, $100, $250 a year for their membership make up about 45% of our total funding. So our members on the ground are the lifeblood of our organization. They always have been, and they always will be. And that has been a huge impact, particularly in the last 3 or 4 months, that we have not seen a huge drop-off in organizational funding. And through that has come financial stability. So we completed 2019 ahead of budget. We had revenues of roughly $487,000 against expenses of $448,000. In addition, we received nearly $1 million in in-kind support from the Southern Environmental Law Center throughout the coal ash litigation. I have to pause now and thank our friends at SELC for the incredible work they've done for us for many, many years, but 2019 in particular. Thank you. If anyone from SELC is on tonight, thank you from the bottom of our hearts on behalf of all of our membership. We appreciate what you've done and helping us get past that settlement and get that through. Thank you. For 2020, we are $20,000 ahead of budget through July, and we are projecting to make our target budget of roughly $575,000 in revenue for this year. I cannot tell you what an amazing thing that is in the climate that we're in today. Many, many, many nonprofits are struggling in the environment that we are in. But because you have continued to give, and because of 2 significant grants that we received last year, we are going to grow our organization significantly from 2019 to 2020. The Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation awarded us a statewide initiative grant to do our work across the state of North Carolina. And the Harris Foundation, formerly the J. Marion Sims Foundation, awarded us a 2-year grant that will be focused on our work in South Carolina. So 2 large grant organizations recognizing the work that we're doing, one in North Carolina, one in South Carolina, really has bolstered our funding for this year. And we thank you, anyone who's on the call tonight from either one of those organizations, thank you very much. I hope that most of you don't need a lecture on why what we do matters. Many of you, as I've looked at the list of who's on the call tonight, are folks that make very generous contributions and support our mission wholeheartedly with your time and resources. But for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with us and are with us tonight, I hope you saw from Brandon's State of the River report that the water quality and water quantity issues that we face on a day-to-day basis really have important outcomes. And this list of 6 just catches a snapshot. For many of us, recreating on the water, boating, fishing, kayaking, canoeing, whatever you enjoy doing is why you care about the river, why you care about your lake, and why you donate to our organization. And that's an important piece of our vibrant communities. It provides recreation. People want to be here because of our lakes and our river. I think it goes without saying that with 2.3 million people getting their drinking water from the Catawba River, that is a vital, important reason to support this organization. We don't protect it alone, but we are your voice to protect your drinking water. And that impacts our property values. The increase of the development on our lakes particularly has really increased property values in the waterfront in this basin. That creates financial stability for communities by increasing tax base, which impacts all of us on a day-to-day basis. For me, the reason I am a part of this organization and the reason I care about what we do is because I want these resources for my children, my grandchildren, and their children. And so the things we do today will impact the things that our kids have available to them 20, 30, 40 years from now. And all of that leads to the river being a key component of an integrated environment. I noticed on the call that we have friends from Tree Charlotte, from Catawba Lands Conservancy, from Carolina Thread Trail, from NC Wildlife Federation, from Sustain Charlotte, from the Carolina Raptor Center. All of those things, all the work that all those great environmental nonprofits are doing are connected to the water. And the river is the centerpiece of that integrated environment. All the plant life, all the animal life, both benefits and takes from the river, and it is an important resource to maintaining a balance within our environment. So how are we doing that today? Today, we attack our mission under 3 key pillars: educate, engage, and protect. And everything we do falls into one of those areas. And we're going to go through some details of how we did that in the last year. I am honored to introduce you to our program director, Haley Tedder, to talk to you about some of our education programs.
Hey, you guys, like John said, I am Haley Tedder, so I'm our current program director, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about educate. So education is really, really big, not just for adults, like everyone watching, but children as well, because as we all know, children are the future. So a couple big things that happened this year. The first was Camp in a Box. As John mentioned, it was our virtual alternative to in-person summer camps. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we were unable to proceed with in-person large group summer camps, but that wasn't a problem. It didn't stop us. This home edition of summer camps included all instruction as well as all the materials needed for every single lesson. So depending on the lesson that you got, there were 4 different age groups for the boxes. The lessons inside of these boxes were age-appropriate science, nature, as well as outdoor recreation activities. This innovative approach to a virtual summer camp sold a total of 83 boxes. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but to us, it was a huge number. It's more than we expected and anticipated, but it was also enough money to recoup all of our expenses, including the 2 staff counselors that ran our virtual lessons. So that was our Camp in a Box. It went really well. We hope to do it in the future as well. And then Riverkeeper Learning Series, also due to unforeseen circumstances, we started it in January and we had to end in March. So our last one was March 11th. We partnered with the Carolina Farm Trust and we had 4 really awesome farmers come and speak to us as well as Carolina Farm Trust members about the 4 different styles of farming, including traditional, organic, and urban farming. So it's on an indefinite pause, but we plan to have more events that connect us and as well as our community members on this shared resource that we call the river. And then our last education opportunity. So this was the last week for submissions for our CLT Future 2020 competition. This competition is aimed at engaging high school students that are interested in solving local environmental issues. So the first stage ended this week on Tuesday. Thanks to our sponsor, Catawba Research, we've partnered with 5 other local environmental nonprofits to mentor 6 local high school students that are interested in the environmental solutions of problems that we currently face, not just here in Charlotte, but globally. So our partners are the Raptor Center, the Carolina Thread Trail, Clean Air Carolina, Sustain Charlotte, and Ann Springs Close Greenway. As John mentioned, a lot of our staff and support are currently watching this. So, hey, you guys, thank you for your support and for your help. We would love for you all to attend this virtual event. It's going to be on October 13th. More registration is to come about that event. So thank you so much for you guys who've supported us. I hope that if you got a Camp in a Box, you enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night.
All right. Awesome. Well, hey there, water fans. I'm Wayne, your engagement coordinator. My job is to help encourage the community to actually interact with the river. So here are some of those highlights from the year so far. For one, in the spring, there is a demand to get outside and on the water in a fun but safe way for everyone. So that's where John actually came up with On the Water with Wayne sessions. So that's where we have 12 episodes on Facebook and YouTube where you can go out and check out some locations that you can go out in the water and have some fun yourself and still get social distance and all that good stuff too. We have over 5,000 views already on Facebook, still climbing, so go check out those videos and go out and have some fun. Otherwise, other ways that we've engaged would be cleanups. So far we've had 75 volunteers come sacrifice their mornings to come down and get dirty and pick up some trash out of the creeks in Charlotte. We've collected over 3,000 pounds of trash. Keep rocking, pick up that trash, and even with the Dirty Money Challenge we have going on too, keep picking up that trash and collecting. But with the cleanup program, we also have a program that's called Litter Getters that we're partnering with. These are floating traps that live on several creeks within Charlotte. So as it rains outside, water will collect trash, it flows down the creeks, and this trap will catch all that debris. So our team goes out, we collect whatever trash happens to be in it, and it's definitely a cool program that we've had since February. It's gonna keep going because it's working really well. We've collected over 2,200 pounds of trash just from 3 traps already. So I'm really excited to potentially get more in Charlotte and of course other places of the basin. That'd be really exciting. I do want to throw a shout out to our team though for all of their help throughout the year because it wouldn't be possible without them. So we've got Rodrigo, Ryan, Greg, Bob, Joel, Nancy, Steven, another Ryan, Charlie, and Zach. Thank you guys all for your help this year. Then we get into some of the more fun kind of ways of engaging. We have youth kayaking, which is where groups of kids can come out and go kayaking for a beginner level experience. We adapted it a little bit this year to where it's more kids individually could come out to go kayaking with our group in a sense, rather than full groups coming to us. So we call it kids kayaking. Really successful. It was really fun that each location got to be at different spots of the basin. And we had 6 different dates with 58 kids come out and have a first time experience with us. Super, super awesome with that. But again, wouldn't have been possible without our awesome volunteers. That includes Deb, Becca, Julia, Ryan, and Maisie. Thank you guys for bringing it and being awesome out there. Then we have our summer paddle series. Now these are on Thursday evening nights, another way of kind of getting out in the water and being out there in a beginner kind of level and to show people other spots of the basin. So again, 5 different locations that we went to on the basin. We had 57 participants, so super stoked. Keep telling your friends, bring them out so they can get that experience in the water too. And then we have our eco tours. Now, eco tours typically are situations where you need to bring more of your own gear. For example, a kayak is helpful, and that allows us to be able to travel over more of the basin for us, so we can travel up to Lake James and other areas. So we've had 7 tours so far with 51 participants. So thank you guys for coming out. Keep supporting us, having some fun. That's how you're going to grow your love of the river. But we've had volunteers that made that absolutely necessary. So that would be Claire and Greg, Brandon, Dennis, Ryan, Kim, Julia, and John. So thank you guys again for making it fun and educational. And then we have kayak rentals, which John alluded to earlier. So those are down in Kevin Lofton Park in Belmont. Definitely another cool opportunity as a beginner level or even advanced if you're looking for just a new place to go out and check out the river. So we've been doing that for 4 weekends. This weekend will be a 5th weekend. And then we've had over 70 participants so far. So super exciting and really exciting to be getting more of the community involved with it. And then again, those associates that get that place or get it running would be John, Ryan, Delaney, Rashad, Kelsey, Quest, Tyler, Eliza, and Zach. So thank you guys again for making that run and operate. But thank you guys for your support and showing your love of the Catawba River. We must all be involved in order to help keep things progressing and to make a difference out there. But I'd like to go ahead and invite back our Executive Director, John Searby.
I think it's pretty obvious that no one really wants to follow Wayne. You know, he's the hardest act to follow in our staff. We always make him go last at staff meetings because nobody brings the energy like Wayne. Thank you, Wayne, for everything you've done for our organization. So what's the future look like for the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation? Well, a few months ago, when we were starting to think about what does 21 and beyond look like, we came across this quote, often attributed to Abraham Lincoln, that says, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And we really took that to heart because whether it's water quality issues, engaging people with the river, or educating folks young and old, if you sit back and let it happen to you, it's not going to make a difference. If you go out and proactively work to make things better, that's where the action is. So we are approaching our 25th anniversary. This is our 23rd year in existence as an organization. And in 2 years, when we celebrate our 25th anniversary, we want to be prepared with a strategic plan that sets forward what the next 25 years are going to look like. So we've developed what we call Vision 2025. It's a capacity building campaign that will allow us to proactively prepare for the challenges that we know are coming to our river basin, many of which Brandon addressed earlier tonight. So how are we going to prepare and build the foundation that Vision 2025 is going to be built on? First and foremost, collaboration. One thing I have learned in my 18 months with this organization is that there are tons of passionate people and organizations that care deeply about the waters of this river basin. We want to be the collaborating force amongst all those groups. We have a comprehensive view of the river basin, and we can help drive policy and action amongst nonprofits, municipalities, private landowners, and groups all across the basin. We will increase our action. As Brandon mentioned, the state of North Carolina continues to cut budgets under environmental quality protections, while South Carolina just keeps up. We want to step into that gap and increase our volume and types of testing to be more active on the water than ever before. Education and engagement will be keys to what we do moving forward. We must educate all people across the entire basin, all ages, reaching all demographics to help everyone understand why their water is vital to life. And we have found, and we have seen it firsthand in the examples that Wayne just gave you, that when people engage with the water, when they paddle, when they clean up, when they walk or run along the greenway, then they start to feel like a river keeper. And that is when the magic really starts to happen. I'm going to turn it over now to former board chair and our current major gifts director, Michael Lindsay, who's going to talk you through some of the tactical ways that we're going to prepare this organization for the future with Vision 2025.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Michael Lindsay. It's really kind of a pleasure to be here. I've been involved with the organization for 20 years now. As a volunteer, as a donor, as board member, and about a year ago, John invited me to join the staff and help out with some of the future activities here. And for those of you who have been with Riverkeeper for a long time, and for those of you who might be new to our organization, I hope you can feel the energy and the positivity that's coming from our organization. We're in a great place. 2020 has definitely been a tough year in many ways for all sorts of people, but for this organization, it's been a good year. And I hope you're sensing that. And now what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about where we go next. So Vision 2025. I'm going to maybe repeat a little bit of what John said, but also add some detail. So really, it's a 5-year strategic plan that sets the table for how we protect the river for the next 25 years. And really, there's 2 parallel tracks to our Vision 2025 campaign. One is operational, and how we build out our organization and how we execute on some of the ideas, how we execute on our mission. And then the other one track, frankly, is fundraising, which is where my responsibility will be. So we need to move forward on 2 parallel paths over the next 2 years. But operationally speaking, there are 6 key initiatives, which are listed here. A new headquarters in McCaddenville, exciting because it will be on the water. And amazingly enough, we've never had an on-the-water facility, and that looks like it's going to become a reality for us early next year. And the picture you're seeing is our architectural rendering of what our new headquarters will be looking like. So we're really excited about that. Within that headquarters will be a new, larger state-of-the-art lab, which will allow us to not just expand our testing, but actually to bring it all in-house. Historically, we've had to outsource a lot of our actual testing and stuff, which is expensive. It slows things down, and it makes it more difficult for us to be sort of proactive. So with a new lab, which will be part of the headquarters, it's going to expand our capabilities and actually expand the capabilities of the State of the River report. So in the interest of time, I know that I'd love to be able to tell you about each one of these initiatives. But what I can tell you is a key change we're making to our operational model is we're beginning to move everything into a self-sustaining model. In other words, all of our programs will be funding themselves, so that we can begin to really fund the organization through our own operations. Now, that's going to take major investment in order to make that a reality, which is what leads to the second track, fundraising. Okay, where's the next button? Which is it? There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Earlier, John was talking a little bit about, why does this matter? And for us, in thinking about Vision 2025, there was the kind of conversation about, well, why would we launch a major capacity campaign just now? And it's a pretty simple thing, really. Our mission is growing, right? The basin is growing. The population is growing, right? There's increased interest in the environment, which leads to more demand from our community to provide educational programs and engagement programs. Stormwater pressure on the creeks and streams is intensifying. And one thing we want to do coming out of Vision 2025 is to move not to be, when we talk about on the water, it's not to be just on the river and the lakes, but to also be up on the streams and creeks. There's over 5,000 miles of streams in the Catawba River Basin. And it is where the pollution and the challenges and also the opportunities come up in those streams. So we need to expand our capacity so we can walk up those streams and provide water protection and preserve the water quantity in those areas. John also referenced a couple of times reduced public funding, particularly in North Carolina. And that creates a challenge, but also an opportunity for the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation. In other words, that is a gap, if you will, that we want to step into, right? We want to provide some of the monitoring and assessment capabilities and services that the state is no longer able to provide, at least at this time. And we don't see the public funding issue going away. As you know, there's economic issues right now. There's going to be a lot of new challenges. There's going to be a lot of need for new programs, whether it's educational or other, service programs for the communities. So it's going to be difficult for North Carolina and for South Carolina to invest in environmental protection in the way we all would like to see it. That is an opportunity for the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation. So what are our goals for Vision 2025? Basically, John just sort of spoke to it. We want to enable a basin full of riverkeepers, all right? First thing is we want to double our membership. John just talked about 5,600 members currently. So we want to grow that to close to 10, 12,000 members. And that only happens with a real focused effort on our operational model and program so that we can support and truly enable all those new volunteers and supporters. There's three ways we're going to accomplish this. We want to lean, and that's what's listed here on the screen. We want to lean on science-based advocacy with a comprehensive view of the river. The State of the River report that Brandon just introduced you to tonight is an example of that commitment. Next, we want formed and collaborative actions. I think it goes back to the slide that John was just walking through. There's no doubt that collaboration is a critical component of protecting this river and preserving this river. And we want to provide the information necessary so that people can collaborate on the kinds of programs that will support and preserve and protect this river for the next 25 years. And finally, we want to be able to encourage individual engagement. You certainly heard from Wayne about all the programs that we offer, and we feel that is through that kind of engagement, the people get committed to protecting the river and then bring their community as a whole into the action plan that we want to develop for this river. So that is kind of an overview of Vision 2025. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of detail, but in the interest of time, I'm kind of moving quickly. So the last thing I want to do is sort of ask you to engage. For Vision 2025 to be successful, we need your help. Engage with us. Just as we are asking all our partners to engage, we ask each and every one of our members to engage with us, right? Take advantage of the programs that the Catawba Riverkeeper Foundation offers, whether it's education, whether it's engagement, whether it's protection. We develop these programs for you, and we ask you to engage with us. Next, please let others know, friends, family, everybody. It's going to be a lot of work to get to 12,000 members, and we can only get there if you help us with sharing the news about what the Riverkeeper's up to. And finally, we ask that you make a pledge. Support us, support Vision 2025. Help us protect this river for the next 25 years. Thank you for your time, and I guess I'm turning it back to Tyler. Okay, our board chair, thank you very much. Best of luck to everybody.
Thank you very much, Michael. All right, so I've got a few closing remarks to go through, so hold on for just a couple more minutes. And while you're listening, if you have any other questions you wanted to ask, really anybody that's presented today, feel free to put those through the chat function on your meeting screen, and we can bring back the relevant person to answer that question once I've gone through my just couple closing sentences here. So just bear with me. So just a couple parting words that I'd like to share before we conclude. Once again, many, many thanks to everyone that has given to the extraordinary progress of the organization this year. I hope that that really showed through in presentations of all the staff at this evening. Couple people I want to go through, not individually, but groups, I guess. First off, huge thank you to all of our volunteers and supporters, for which without you, this organization would not be able to do what it does. So I just want to give a huge round of applause to all of you. Further to that note, enormous gratitude to the CRF staff who you've heard from this evening. Not everybody, but a lot of them were here. John, Brandon, Diana, Haley, Claire, Michael, Wayne, Greg, Morgan, Zach, and last but not least, of course, Deb. The entire Catawba Watery River Basin thanks you, and your work is truly invaluable. So we appreciate everything you guys do. And it makes my role as volunteer really easy. Thank you also to my fellow officers on the board. Working with me is no easy feat, I've been told sometimes, so thank you to Shirley, Katie, and Will. And I know I'm missing many other people in other groups, but one more big thank you to the Carolina Raptor Center for hosting us this evening at their beautiful new facility here in Huntersville. Please come out and take a look, and we hope you will support them as well as a good partner of ours. So this year, we hope you participate. We hope you participate in River Sweep on October 3rd, participate in cleanups, in events, in Young Allies of the River, in eco tours, in swim guide, in environmental education, summer camps, water watching trainings, and kayaking. We hope you'll pledge your support for Vision 2025, and we need volunteers most of all in everything that we do, all of these different events and our capacity campaign and Vision 2025. You are the most important aspect in all of this. So thank you, and we hope you'll continue to support us going forward and see you at events in the coming year. So do we have any questions that have come through? Do not believe we have any other questions. So we hope you have a safe, happy, and healthy upcoming holiday season in 2021. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. And thank you very much for joining. We'll see you this time next year and hopefully many times before. Thanks.